Yo, what up, what up, what up, and welcome back to Pnoid News. Man, listen, all right, got some geopolitics going on in the world right now, and I think that, it's something we might want to discuss and look at, as far as things is really concerned, stuff moving around. So let's have this conversation. In a submarine deal with Australia, U.S. counters China but enrages France. A reaction signals a widening rift among Western allies over China. French officials accuse President Biden of acting like his predecessor. As like we've been saying for a long time, on this channel, and well, anyway, at least on this channel, the world order is kind of breaking down. Right. And I think it's kind of important we look at that in a proper manner. Right. Because I think that having this mentality that we sit here and go, man, listen, the world's kind of moving around. Like things are not what they used to be, and things are never going to be what they used to be. And it didn't start with Trump. It started long before Trump. When we went into war in the Middle East and other countries flat just didn't come with us. So Paris. President Biden's announcement of a deal to help Australia deploy nuclear-powered submarines has strained the Western alliance, infuriating France and foreshadowing how the conflicting American and European responses to confrontation with China may redraw the global strategic map. In announcing the deal on Wednesday, Mr. Biden said it was meant to reinforce alliances and update them as a strategic priority shift. But in drawing a Pacific ally closer to meet the China challenge, he appears to have alienated an important European one and aggravated already tense relations with Beijing. France on Thursday reacted with outrage to the announcements that the United States and Britain would help Australia develop submarines, and that Australia was withdrawing from a $66 billion deal to buy French-built submarines. At its heart, the diplomatic storm is also a business matter, a loss of revenue for France's military industry and a gain for American companies. Jean-Yves Le Drian, France's foreign minister, told France Info Radio that the submarine deal was a unilateral, brutal, unpredictable decision by the United States, and he compared the American move to the rash and sudden policy shifts common among the Trump's administrations. Always got to bring up Trump. Underscoring its fury, France canceled a gala scheduled for Friday at its embassy in Washington to mark the 240th anniversary of a Revolutionary War battle. This looks like the new geopolitical order without binding alliances, said Nicole Baccarin, a researcher at Sciences Po in Paris. To confront China, the United States appears to have chosen a different alliance with the Anglo-Saxon world, separate from France. She predicted a very hard period in the older friendship between Paris and Washington. The deal also seemed a pivot point in relations with China, which reacted angrily. The Biden administration appears to be upping the ante with Beijing by providing a Pacific ally with submarines that are much harder to detect than conventional ones. Such as medium-range Pershing II missiles were deployed in Europe in the 1980s in order to deter the Soviet Union. A statement from Mr. de Le Drian and Florence Parly, France's armed forces minister, called the American choice to exclude a European ally and partner such as France a regrettable decision that shows a lack of coherence. All right, so let's have this conversation. Australia is a commonwealth of the UK, right? And the UK recently, sat here and built 2 new fucking aircraft carriers. And when the UK stood here and broke away from the EU, and had that Brexit, basically they came to the United States and said, hey, look, we need some help. We're going to need strategic trading partners, things of this nature, right? And they have to provide security for Canada, Australia, India, all the places that are still commonwealths of, Great Britain. And basically, United States said, well, here's what we can do for you. Those 2 new aircraft carriers you're building, they're ours, right? You're going to float them in the United States fucking Navy, right? We're going to put those into use in our fucking strategic shit that we need. Second one is, that financial center you got in London that washes, euros and dollars and shit. Yeah, that's coming to New York, is what it is. And they've sat here and they said, well, okay. Because they ain't had no fucking choice. It's not the first time we've done this to Great Britain, right? Believe it or not, when World War II broke out and, they needed supplies and they needed ships. FDR sat here and had a conversation with Winston Churchill, and Winston Churchill was like, yo, we need ships. And FDR was like, oh, man, you know what? We got these really terrible, awful, garbage ships that most of them didn't make it across the Atlantic. We'll give you those. Right? And Winston Churchill was like, thank you. It's appreciated. He goes, well, that's not for free. We're going to take all of your colonies in, you know what I'm saying, the fucking Western Hemisphere. And that actually happened. So understand, legit, we always take it out of Britain's ass. And that's what we're doing right now. We're basically standing here saying, well, you know what? We understand you want to stand here and, have these type of, have these protections for your colonies or whatever it is. The commonwealths, as they're called. What we're going to do, though, is, we're going to stand here and say, fuck France. You're going to have them Australians buy them from us, and we're going to supply them. And, you're going to get a piece of it, of course. But for the most part, we're going to stand here and build them, and we're going to give them to them. And they're nuclear power submarines. And this way, the U.S. doesn't have to have so much fucking weight out in the goddamn fucking Eastern Pacific. Important things. And not only that, if Australia still wants to have trade, right, because, they're an export-led economy because of the fact that their population is so low and their birth rate so low, and they want to break away from China, they're going to have to deal with the U.S. and India. And they're going to have to defend their own trade routes because the U.S. is not going to do it for free anymore. It is what it is. The Australian vessels would have nuclear reactors for propulsions, but not nuclear weapons. France and the rest of the European Union are intent on avoiding a direct confrontation with China, as they underscored on Thursday in a policy paper titled The EU Strategy for Cooperation in the Indo-Pacific, whose release was planned before the fracas. It said the bloc would pursue multifaceted engagement with China, cooperating on issues of common interest while pushing back where the fundamental disagreement exists with China, such as on human rights. The degree of French anger recalled the acrimonious rift in 2003 between Paris and Washington over the Iraq War, and involved language not heard since then. This is not done between allies, Mr. de Leon said. His comparison to Mr. Biden to Trump appeared certain to be taken in the White House as a serious insult, and France said it had not been consulted on the deal. We heard about it yesterday, Mrs. Parley told RFI Radio. The Biden administration said it had not told French leaders beforehand because it was clear that they would be unhappy with the deal. The administration decided it was up to Australia to choose whether to tell Paris, said a U.S. official who spoke on the condition of anonymity, because he was not authorized to address the matter publicly, but he allowed that the French had a right to be annoyed, and that the decision was likely to fuel France's desire for a European Union military capability independent of the United States. You probably should, because we're not going to keep doing it for you. We don't care about you. Administration officials described the president's commitment to the Atlantic Alliance as unwavering, and Minister Biden said on Wednesday that the deal was about investing in our source of strength, our alliances, and updating them. At least with respect to France, one of America's oldest allies, that claim appeared to have backfired. France had struck its own deal in 2016 to provide Australia with conventional submarines, and a legal battle over its collapse appears inevitable. A knife in the back, Mr. de Leon said of the Australian decision, noting that Australia was rejecting a deal for strategic partnership that involved a lot of technological transfers and a contract for 50-year period. 50-year period of diesel-powered submarines. Nobody wants a diesel-powered submarine. Look at Scott Morrison, Australia's Prime Minister, did not even mention France in the video conference with Mr. Biden and Prime Minister Boris Johnson of Britain, during which the deal was announced. Britain's partnership with the United States is in the deal is another irritant to France. After British exit from the European Union and Mr. Johnson's embrace of global Britain strategy aimed at largely at the Indo-Pacific region, the long-standing French suspicion of an Anglophone cabal pursuing its own interests to the exclusion of France is never far beneath the surface. The deal also challenged the President Emmanuel Macron of France on some of his central strategic choices. He is determined that France should not get sucked into the increasingly harsh confrontation between China and the United States. Rather, Macron wants France to lead the European Union towards a middle course between the two great powers, demonstrating that the European strategic autonomy at the core of his vision. He has spoken about an autonomous Europe operating beside America and China. Such comments have been an irritant, if no more than that, given how far Europe stands militarily from such autonomy. to the Biden administration. Mr. Biden is particularly sensitive to the question of American 20th century sacrifice for France, the two world wars, and France prickiness over its independence within the NATO alliance. Mr. Macron has not visited the White House since Mr. Biden took office, nor is there any sign that he will soon. The EU statement on Indo-Pacific strategy committed European nations to a deeper involvement at all levels in the region. Its wording, combining broad engagement with dissent on human rights, broadly reflected Mr. Macron's quest for a policy that does not risk rupture with China, but also avoids bowing to Beijing. France said the strategy confirmed a desire for a very ambitious action in this region that aims at preserving the freedom of sovereignty for all. Well, let's keep this a buck, all right? If you're not standing here manufacturing your own goods or looking like you're going to, right? You know what I'm saying? If you're not standing here, having another way to be able to get goods without using these slave labor tactics of the fucking Chinese, all that shit means nothing. And if you have no strength behind your fucking words, all that shit means nothing in the end of the day. That's kind of the deal. That's where we are right now. And that's why no one gives a fuck about Europe. All right? You're going to be a dead fucking continent here soon. Because you're not having any kids. You have nobody to pay the bills. And the best you can hope for is to take in billions of fucking immigrants to help you out. And that's not something that you want to do. And it's not something your people want done. And it's not something they're going to let you do. So what do? I don't know. I would suggest arming up, rebuilding your manufacturing base, and understanding what's going on, moving these individuals out of these fucking cities, and start building suburbs. I understand that, your fucking sensibilities aren't positive to this, but the truth is, you need room to raise kids. And if you don't have any fucking kids, there's no point to any of this. You have a terminal demographic in most of the countries in Western Europe. Just part of life. You're going to have to figure out something new. Anyway, look, man, I guess y'all got the, basic premises of what's going on. It's Tom P's of Pnoid News. You know what it is. Peace.